last presentation, guys. Well, good morning. I'm Jacob Shang. I'm a third-year wildlife ecology conservation major.
I'm Brayden Edwards. I'm also a third-year wildlife major.
I'm Josh. I am a third-year electrical engineering technology major.
And today we'll be talking about the parks and green spaces of the Jefferson-Chalmers area, which have a rich and diverse history throughout our timeline. Just a little overview before we get started. 1701, Fort Detroit is founded by the French Army. In 1903, the village of Fairview is founded. In 1907, Fairview is annexed by the city of Detroit. In the 1920s, the Jefferson-Chalmers neighborhood is founded. And finally, in 2004, Jefferson-Chalmers is added to the National Registry of Historic Places. And here we just have an overview depicting where all the parks and green spaces are located in the Jefferson-Chalmers area and the greater city of Detroit. And from here, I'll be handing off to Brayden to talk about A.B. Ford Park.
All right, so our first park is the Alfred Rush Ford Park. That is in Jefferson-Chalmers. It is named after a lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Force who flew a P-47 Thunderbolt, like one pictured here, over Germany. Sadly, he lost his life while on a mission, and he went down over a small German town named Ashburg. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, so today A.B. Ford's his final resting place is in Elmwood Cemetery in Detroit. His grave is marked by a copper P-47 propeller, but there's also a cross for him in Ashburg, Germany, where he crashed his plane. So before it was a public park, it was actually a Cold War missile control site for the missiles that were located on Belle Isle. But after the Cold War, those installations were taken down, and it was later turned into the A.B. Ford Park that we know today. So that's a picture of one of the radio towers that is still standing in A.B. Ford Park.
And here on the bottom, we can see through our different sandboards that we had, the development around the park, but also the fact that there was not development documented within the park here throughout the time.
All right, getting into Maharis Gentry Park, which is my personal favorite probably to talk about, was originally established as Algonquin Park in 1928 and has undergone several changes since its inception. The first significant infrastructure was a community center that was constructed in 1933, and about a decade later, the park was renamed to Maharis Park in honor of World War II soldier and friend of Mr. Bronson Gentry, who we discussed a lot earlier in our great presentation, Peter Maharis. In the late 1950s, Mr. Bronson Gentry called upon the city to improve the park, in which the city responded and allocated roughly $500,000 to a park. Not this one, though. They wanted to establish a community center in a predominantly white area, in which Bronson Gentry, infuriated, as justifiably so, then outraged, wanted to bus his black children to this predominantly white area, which the city, racist response, was outraged by that and said, all right, we'll give you the $500,000. So then they built a pool and recreation center in the area. The park then faced issues in the late 90s when an urban development team wanted to develop the park for a waterfront area. Bronson, ill at the time, came up from his deathbed and again fought the city of Detroit, winning this battle again. And he finally got his flowers in 2002 when the park was renamed to the Maharis Gentry Park. And as you can see here is a poem written by his children, Della and Dexter Gentry, about the park and how important it is to their family and the Jefferson-Chalmers area. And moving on to our next park, we have Mariner Park, which is a very interesting one, as it used to house
Mariner Park, there's important things to cover. So during the 1929 sandboards, there was not development in the park. It was an area that was not documented in these sandboards. But then when we zoom into the 1949s, you can see that there was a fair bit of temporary military housing in the area. All of these green squares are different temporary military housing, as well as a yacht club further down, and some different boating areas in a marina, and the facilities required to support that.
All right, now on to Mariner Park. So, Mariner Park was once a navigational beacon during the War of 1812 for Navy men and sailors. But afterwards, in the early 1930s, a marine hospital was constructed at the Windmill Point area in this park to serve for sailors and Navy men. Shortly then after, the U.S. Naturalization and Immigration Services took over this hospital and repurposed it into an immigration detention center. During this time, offices, nurses' buildings, and whatnot were founded in the same land. The federal government then acquired this land in 1982 as the hospital building, and the offices faced many threats of closure during the 1960s all the way up until the 1970s. And finally, the hospital was scheduled for demolition in June of 1984. Up until the late 90s and early 2000s, the land remained vacant. As you can see now, there's a couple soccer fields, and I believe there's a little park with the lighthouse still standing. And just a little tidbit, it's still a big fishing spot in the Detroit and Jefferson-Chalmers area.
And here you can see that we have the hospital. That's about all that's on the park area is the hospital, assorted buildings around it, as well as the lighthouse. And this is in 1929. And then in 1949, you can see all the development surrounding that. The hospital got an expansion wing, as well as laundry facilities and more housing for the workers on site. And the lighthouse stayed the same.
So our last park is the Riverfront Lakewood East Park, which started off as a residential area, and namely Harry G. Garland of the Garland Manufacturing Company owned a big chunk of this park. And not only his home was there, but he also had a float plane seaport. But then later in 1952, the city of Detroit used eminent domain to reacquire the property and wanted to make it into a park for the public. So some of the pictures here, we have Harry Garland as they're making a wooden seaplane ramp. What's special about Garland Seaplane Base is he also had a concrete pad that was the only one in the region, so he could land larger seaplanes. So this is a map showing where exactly his seaplane base was. Here's an aerial, you can see a few of his planes. There's another aerial. And then here's the park today. There's 2 parking lots, a little pavilion, and a nice wooded area for people to have picnics at.
And then back to our Sanborns, giving some reference. In the 1929, you can see the industrial that did exist there at the time, as this area was a boat livery. This was a place where people were building boats. There were dwellings all around. Lots of people lived there. Lots of boat manufacturing in that area. And then as we shift over to 1949, you can see it's reduced the manufacturing and dwelling in that area. We have a house and a boat place up top, but then down below we have our seaplane area set up down that we had. I forgot names already. And now we get into Detroit of Bloom, which is a farm and wellness garden that was established by the community in about 2014, not 2014, I can read the numbers that are on my screen, 2015, as a non-profit cut flower farm to bring beauty and joy to the community, as well as grow the community itself. So the garden's evolution is marked by sustainability and engaging the community. So Detroit of Bloom has a large variety of programs aimed at teaching people how to garden, how to grow different flowers, as well as just community engagement as well through various different horticultural therapy things and educational workshops. So today they serve as a beacon of wellness and growth, as well as economic care for the area by showcasing sustainable farming practices and increasing the biodiversity and showcasing the importance of green space within the urban environment. And you can see a photo above as well as this one here, both of which are not current per se, because it's a little cold still for flowers, but they are photos of Detroit bloom during their peak flowering seasons, we'll say. So then we have Feed 'em Freedom, which is a community garden in the northern-ish corner of the Jefferson-Chalmers district. Not a great description, I know, but that's where it is in my brain, is the northern-ish corner. So we have a little documentary there about them, and Freedom Feed 'em was established in 2009 by Wayne and Myrtle Thompson Curtis as a grassroots initiative for communal bonds nurturing crops. So it's a space where the community can come together. They have different raised beds, hoop houses, berries, all of that, and they can all come together to learn, share knowledge, and grow different fruits and enjoy the fruits of their labor as a group. So it helps enrich the community once again, showing different ways of gardening, going, hey, you can go do this at your house. Here's all the supplies you need. And it helps them grow and increase the legacy and just biodiversity and everything of the community. So you can see the original sign that we have for them pictured here when the park first started out from that time. And then we have their current sign here with everything in behind. You can see the raised beds off to the right, well, my right, your right still, mirroring helps. And behind the sign, we have all of the hoops for protecting their berries from the birds. And then back in the corner, you can kind of make out where they have their shed for storage of everything.
And before we end this presentation, we'd like to send our special thanks to the Gentry family, the residents of Jefferson-Chalmers, the Jefferson-Chalmers Water Project, and the city of Detroit as a whole. And I'd also like to send a special thanks to the History Detroit Study Abroad program for giving us a great opportunity to learn about the city.